Hello and welcome to the podcast series Anecdotes of Digital Humanities. This is part second of the fourth episode of the series. So let's get started. So Samo, I have a question for you. What is the, what do you think about the infrastructural problems in adapting DH
Yes,
in India?
yes. The first things first is that digital humanities in India still remains a curiosity. That, oh, wow, what is this? And sadly, it is limited to that. But recently, I'm glad to say, with initiatives like we have in IIT Jodhpur and with our professors and everyone working round the clock to spread awareness about digital humanities, the idea of digital humanities has been gaining a lot of steam in the country. But the problem is, it still exists outside the purview of the curriculum as we understand it today. It still exists as a niche area of research, which some eccentric people like you and me are a part of. But my problem or my space of involvement would be to make it for everyone. Because if it stays limited within the privileged coteries and the spaces, then it becomes a privileged endeavor. But there is a problem. The link between computation and infrastructure is very strong in DH. And for that, by definition, we need more infrastructural power. In IIT, you will have a lab where you can work on. But the point is, the person who wants to work on digital humanities in a college beside the Sundarbans, where do they get this infrastructure from? So we have to think about DH outside computation. Yes, computation is very important. Thinking critically about data is extremely important. But can we, very audaciously speaking, think about DH in a very minimalistic, low data, low infrastructure driven scenarios where people in rural, semi-urban conditions can come up with DH questions, DH research questions.
Mhm.
Can we create that infrastructural possibility through the minimality that exists because of the immense digital divide?
Yeah, so Shamo, one question arises from this point. Can we say that we in hurry to implementing DH in India without? Are we actually infrastructure ready for this big field? Like digital humanities itself, a very
No
big
one is
umbrella.
ever infrastructure ready for anything. No one is
Mm-hmm.
ever infrastructure ready for anything,
Mm-hmm.
which is why we have the debate that should policy precede infrastructure or should infrastructure precede policy? That if you give a policy decision, people will say that there is no infrastructure. What can we do with the policy decision? That it doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes what happens is once you implement something, because it is implemented, the infrastructure happens. But that is very elitist in nature. I'll give you an example. Online learning
Mm-hmm.
was not even a distant dream 2 years ago. Could you have imagined people across ages, across cities and towns and villages, learning online in their phones and computers in their homes, uploading and scanning PDFs as answer sheets? Definitely not. But the point is, we have lost, we have had the digital at a huge cost. What is the cost? Accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, books are costly. Many students can't afford books. Now, if you again bring technology in the picture, many students will be lost to accommodate the digital. Which is why we need to think about the digital standing outside the digital infrastructures. It is a paradox, huge paradox. And to be honest, it sounds stupid when I say it.
Yeah.
But the point is not eliminating digital infrastructure from the digital humanities questions. It is about thinking about how much can we do with bare minimum.
Agree.
That is all what I
Yeah.
have to say.
Thank you, Samo. Thank you for the lovely views on some questions. Thank you. Thank you. So now next moving on to Anjana. Anjana, what do you think
Yes.
about the situation of DH in India, or the space of DH in India?
While discussing about digital humanities in India, we need to acknowledge the class discussions we had, which kept on repeating that data never exists in silos. But the social and cultural context from which data comes is essential or maybe inevitable to understand data. So, I think in Indian context, with such a rich human resource of more than 1.2 billion people, and with the multiple structural issues of caste, class, gender, all these so many of structural issues, a discipline like digital humanities is essential to make the space better and more inclusive as more and more people are accessing the digital world.
Thank you, Anjana. Okay, Anesthesia, since you are in UCL, so you are adding some international angle to the podcast series. So I would like to ask a different question, not belonging to the just Indian boundaries, but on the global level. Like, what do you think the space of digital humanities in the traditional subjects or in the world? How DH is behaving?
Well, it is very interesting because in London, what we mostly learn is the work of DH in museums, I would say. And if you look at museums in England or in Britain in general, you would see that they are very digitized. So you go into museum and everything is interactive, even the museums where you would think that you can't add anything digital to there are still iPads or something, where you can learn more about the object or transcribe something. So, but then coming back to Russia, I walk into a museum and there is none of that. So I would be like asking an open question to how can we bring that back to Russia, or maybe India or some other countries, looking at Britain as a great example. And the idea is, how do we persuade the museums in Russia again that is what we need, and how do we bring that there, because it's the field, if we're only talking about museums, it's not only about how you show the objects or whatever you're showing, or even paintings or artists, but also the keeping track of everything that you have, finding the history of that object, that the whole work of it is digital humanities. And just being back home here in Russia, I don't see all of it. And I know that museums are not at that level yet, but I see the potential of it. And I feel like us working here in digital humanities, that's what we should be looking at globally.
Thank you, Anastasia.